Chang, and this is the best of Bloomberg Technology, where we bring you all our top interviews from this week in tech. Coming up, big tech takes on Washington as Jack Dorsey and Sheryl Sandberg testify before the Senate. How is this time different from when Mark Zuckerberg was in the hot seat? Plus, Amazon joins the $1 trillion valuation club. The air is thin up there, so how will the e-commerce giant fare alongside Apple? And Bumble puts women first in the dating game. Now the company is turning that attitude to investment. We'll hear from CEO Whitney Wolfe Herd on her plans to invest in other women. But first to our top story, big tech took center stage on Capitol Hill this week. Facebook COO Sheryl Sandberg and Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey face questions from the Senate Intelligence Committee on Russian election meddling and more. Notably absent, Google, though a symbolic third chair was left empty for the search engine, and lawmakers openly expressed their disapproval over being snubbed. Otherwise, the discourse was more civil than when Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg testified back in May. But Sandberg and Dorsey, though contrite, gave familiar refrains.
As a bipartisan report from this committee said, Russia used social media as part of, and I quote, a comprehensive and multifaceted campaign to sow discord, undermine democratic institutions, and interfere in U.S. elections and those of our allies. We were too slow to spot this and too slow to act. That is on us.
We are proud of how that free and open exchange has been weaponized and used to distract and divide people and our nation. We found ourselves unprepared and ill-equipped for the immensity of the problems that we've acknowledged.
Once that was over, Twitter CEO answered questions before the House Energy and Commerce Committee. Republicans pressed Dorsey on what they believe is the shadow banning of conservatives. Bloomberg's chief Washington correspondent Kevin Cirilli caught up with Senate Intelligence Committee Vice Chair Mark Warner and asked about his thoughts on the testimonies.
They clearly understand that this problem of Russian intervention or other foreign countries' intervention and spreading misinformation, disinformation is not going to go away. I think they're finally taking it seriously. They didn't take that for the first year after 2016 elections. Now I think they realize this is an ongoing challenge. Two, I heard a real willingness to sit down and work with us on how we can get appropriate rules of the road, not to overregulate, not to cut off innovation, but I heard, for example, from Twitter that they thought there was a validity in the point I made that should a human being have a right to know whether they're being contacted on social media by another human being or by a computer or by a bot. Doesn't have to mean that you get rid of the bots, but it does mean maybe you should have that indication.
So what's the framework look like? What does this actually look like?
Yeah. There's also a question where I thought Facebook was very forward-leaning about the idea not only would they make more public which of our personal data they may be using when they sell that to advertisers, but actually help us know how much value they're getting. So if you know how much value your personal information is creating in the marketplace, more price transparency, I think that's a good thing for all involved. They also even said that they thought there were certain sites that incented violence at such a level, and we cited the example of what's taking place in Myanmar, where there's military sites that are incenting people to go out and kill the Muslim minority called the Rohingya, that they would have both a moral and a legal obligation to take down those sites. So I heard a real willingness to think about this together in a way that tries to, the wild, wild west in social media is not going to stand. There has to be some guardrails, but not in a way that cuts off innovation or American leadership.
They said that they were willing to come to the table, but what does that table look like in terms of next steps? I mean, what is the timeline here in terms of regulation, in terms of there being working groups?
Well, I think one of the things that I was proud of today was our committee showed that a lot of the folks had done some of their homework. This was not an Internet 101
I would agree.
The way some of the earlier hearings had been. But we will continue to sit down with these companies and others. One of the reasons why it was so frustrating that Google decided not to participate, which I think was a huge error on their part. But we'll sit down with these companies and say, how do we get this right in a way that at the end of the day, allows users of this information to have a better judge of its accuracy, better judge of its origin, and not trying to limit people's discussion, but at least be able to have some sense of what's real and not.
I want to press you on Google in particular because you went there, you visited them, you met with these companies. For them to essentially say, we're not showing up, they were a no-show at this hearing, essentially not just saying no to the committee, but also not taking questions from the country just 10 weeks before a midterm election.
Kevin, I don't get it. I've worked with Google for years. I think they've been a very forward-leaning company. And their unwillingness to sit down and try to work with not just Congress, but for that matter, as you said, answer questions that Americans have, I think at the end of the day, it's going to hurt their reputation, not just with the policymakers, but I think with a whole lot of Google users. What do they have to hide if they aren't willing to show up and answer questions?
That was Senator Mark Warner with Bloomberg's Kevin Cirilli there. I want to walk through the day's hearings and bring in someone who recently testified before the Senate Committee on Foreign Operations in Social Media, Laura Rosenberger, co-director of the Alliance for Securing Democracy, as well as Bloomberg Tech's Selena Wang, who covers Twitter and attended the day's event. Selena, walk us through the highlights today. The room was packed. Conspiracy theorist Alex Jones was there. Interestingly, probably one of the many people interested in these discussions around shadow banning. But were there any surprises?
It's certainly been a marathon of hearings, and one of them is still ongoing. The Senate hearing, you certainly saw that the lawmakers were more prepared and quite aligned on the issues that they really wanted to hit the tech companies on. We also saw Facebook and Twitter really evolve their statements to say that this is their number one priority, to stop abuses, to stop foreign election meddling. And there were also a lot of questions about, are they adequately equipped to deal with the evolving threats? Many lawmakers brought up the new coordinated misinformation campaign that was coming from Russia and Iran. Now, in the hearing that is still ongoing, we did see the tone shift. It took a much more political tone, and we saw the Democratic and Republican lawmakers really start to divide and be quite combative towards each other. Since the Republican lawmakers really wanted to focus on alleged censorship on these platforms, while Democratic lawmakers really saw this as an invented conspiracy that Republicans are using to push their ideals in preparation ahead of the midterms. However, the conversation did steer towards several other issues, in addition to data privacy, regulation, and election interference. And Jack Dorsey has really kept his cool throughout all of this. This was his first time testifying, and it was quite impressive how he was able to methodically and in his own Dorsey-like introspective way respond to all of the lawmakers' questions.
Dorsey was perhaps more contrite than investors might have wanted him to be. We saw Twitter shares fall. We saw Facebook shares fall as well. Laura, what did you make of what we heard from both Dorsey and Sandberg? Was there any new information here?
Thanks, Emily. You know, there really wasn't much new information here. I think what we heard from them was a recognition that there's a problem, a recognition that they have an obligation to do something about it, but extremely short on specifics in terms of what that actually means. I agree with Senator Warner's assessment that we are hearing more in terms of a willingness to cooperate, potentially with government in terms of tackling this problem. One of the things that the members asked about at a couple of different points was information sharing across the platforms with one another. This is a problem that isn't confined to just one platform. These, our adversaries are using different platforms to different ends. And really, to tackle the problem, we've got to be able to pull all that information together. Jack Dorsey, in particular, came up really short in terms of saying, what they have in place to actually share that kind of information. This is nearly 2 years after the 2016 election. And we're still talking about needing to develop ways to tackle the problem rather than actually doing that in a meaningful way. That's what really concerns me.
That was Laura Rosenberger, the Alliance for Securing Democracy co-director, and Bloomberg Tech's Selena Wang. Coming up, first Apple, then Amazon. But which company will be next to cross $1 trillion valuation? We will discuss. And if you like Bloomberg News, check us out on the radio, listen on the Bloomberg app, Bloomberg.com, and in the U.S. on SiriusXM. This is Bloomberg. Amazon started September with a bang. Shares of the tech giant rose this week, pushing the company beyond a market value of $1 trillion, a milestone Apple reached just last month. It is a big accomplishment, not just for the company, but for CEO Jeff Bezos, who is currently the world's wealthiest person. Most notable has been the speed with which Amazon hit this milestone. Shares have more than tripled in the last 3 years. We talked about all of this and more with Tigris Financial Partners Chief Investment Officer Ivan Feinseth and Bloomberg Tech Global Editor Brad Stone.
It's funny because when I first visited Jeff Bezos up in Seattle, Amazon's stock price had fallen into the single digits. Employees were panicking, and he wrote on the whiteboard in his office, "We are not our stock price." And it's something that Amazon employees might remember today, because as the chart that you showed demonstrates, I mean, this company has been propelled, yes, by strong fundamentals and increasing net income, but really by a wave of optimism, right? That everything that Amazon is involved in will turn out well. This market capitalization has tripled in just the past few years, and everything's got to go perfectly for Amazon to justify this valuation and to keep growing. So Amazon, it's not its stock price. It is doing quite well, in all of its core businesses. It's transformed its operation into a marketplace and a service that helps other customers, other retailers sell online. But clearly, there's a lot of optimism out there.
Well, and Ivan, let's talk about the reality here. How likely is it that everything will go perfectly, as Brad says?
Well, I don't think they really expect it to go perfectly. It's a company that takes risks. They get into new businesses. They invest in growth. And they're continuing to expand outside their core business by adding different services into their online retail supply chain management system, and also their web host, Amazon Web Services. They're adding big data analytics. They're adding AI capabilities. So they keep expanding what they do. And I think the next big area that Amazon goes into is going to be focusing on healthcare.
So, look, Brad, I'm looking at the chart from 1999. And looking at the speed of which shares have risen over the last 3 years, is this rational?
Well, the kind of market decides that. I mean, clearly, yes, it is. These are all rational actors who are buying and holding Amazon stock. This is a company that has executed extraordinarily well over the past, 10 years. The acceleration and loyalty towards Amazon via Amazon Prime, the increasing success of fulfillment by Amazon, where Amazon turns its warehouses over to third parties. All the things it does so well. I mean, and online retail is still 5% of total retail in the U.S. It's much smaller in other markets. So I think some of the optimism is investors rationally looking and seeing that Amazon is an extraordinarily well-run company in markets that have so much room for growth.
So PetroChina briefly crossed the $1 trillion mark in late 2007. Oil prices then crashed. Ivan, do you see some big, potential challenge or headwinds out there that could lead to some downside risk here?
Well, there could be, with the recent run-up and the long-term run-up, there could be some profit taking, and there is a lot of value in a number of other leading tech stocks, specifically Google. I think that Google is a tremendous value here. It has not increased and doesn't trade at the valuation that Amazon does, yet it has a lot of the key business drivers similar to Amazon. So also Microsoft is, again, close to the $1 trillion mark, too. It's a little bit ahead of Google. Microsoft is evolving into a leading cloud play as well. So I think you could have some profit taking in Amazon and people reallocating the money into other stocks that also have potential to go across the $1 trillion, or at least increase in value as well.
Brad, what about the threat of regulation? Is that the biggest threat here?
Right. We talk about this $1 trillion mark when really it's a subjective number. Amazon's not different than it was yesterday, than it is going to be perhaps tomorrow. But it is important in one context, which is that it puts an incredibly visible target on the backs of these companies, right? There's no better illustration that they dominate our landscape. And I think, look, Amazon's seeing it from the right with Trump and his tweets about taxes and the post office, and of course, Jeff's ownership of the Washington Post. And on the left from Bernie Sanders and about wage growth and public assistance. in Amazon's fulfillment centers. I think there's a big conversation about whether Amazon's commitment to low prices is having an impact on some macroeconomic indicators like inflation. And look, I think that, Amazon's the biggest target around. So I do think that regulation is one of their biggest challenges and potentially obstacles in the years ahead.
That said, Ivan, the venture capitalist Chamath Palihapitiya thinks Amazon will be the first company to hit the $3 trillion mark. I know it's hard to look that far ahead, but what do you think of that prediction?
Well, I think the stock still has further potential for a number of reasons. It is, along with Apple, the dominant stocks in the S&P 500. So as money continues to go into the market, passive investors have to, they're both close to 4% each of the S&P 500. So 4 cents out of every dollar going into an index, S&P index fund goes into Amazon, into Apple. And with the rise in the market, it's going to attract more money. So I think it continues to trade up on that basis. Second is they are a very fast growing company, and they continue to evolve into new businesses and develop new markets and go after markets that are fast growing, that they can bring their operating efficiencies to. And I think that they are going to continue to do that, which will drive more growth. So I think there is further upside in the stock. So $3 trillion is probably a ways away. But at some point, when the market rises significantly, Amazon is going to continue to rise significantly as well.
3T, Brad?
It seems excessive, but $1 trillion in 2018 would have surprised me also. And look, Amazon makes a lot of bets, plants a lot of seeds. Alexa is one of them. It's a new computing platform, and it's kind of leading this voice market. If they bring that into cars and into the enterprise, into the workplace, then yeah, I see a lot of different opportunities for Amazon.
That was Bloomberg Tech's Brad Stone and Tigris Financial Partners Chief Investment Officer Ivan Feinseth. Well, Uber is introducing a number of features to make trips safer for drivers and passengers. If you sit in an Uber for too long, the ride-hailing service plans to check up on you to make sure all is okay. There also will be an emergency button for drivers and voice-activated commands. Coming up, dating app Bumble, where women make the first move, has been battling Tinder in court and fending off Facebook's efforts to get into the online dating market. Now, it's looking beyond dating, though. We'll hear from Bumble CEO Whitney Wolfe Herd next. Plus, defense contractor Lockheed Martin's search for the latest AI innovation with a challenge to drone racers. This is Bloomberg. China is said to be exploring a mega merger between two of the nation's 3 wireless carriers. A merger between the nation's second and third biggest telcos, China Unicom and China Telecom, would create the world's second largest wireless operator after China Mobile and give the nation greater scale to speed up development of 5G and gain an advantage over the United States. Well, in 2012, Whitney Wolfe Herd was the only woman on Tinder's founding team. When she left the company 2 years later, however, she didn't leave the dating app scene. She decided to flip the switch on it. Wolfe Herd launched Bumble, the female-first app where women make the first move. Today, the company is one of Tinder's biggest competitors, having facilitated over 500 million connections. And now Wolfe Herd is investing in other women. Last month, the company launched the Bumble Fund, a fund focused on investing in female-founded and led businesses.
We're generally flattered when a competitor wants to come into our unique space. And what we really stay focused on is being true to ourselves. We were founded based on values, and we're a mission-driven company, and there's authenticity to that. And so as long as we stay true to that and we just keep innovating beyond that, we're really not too concerned about competition. And candidly, Facebook has been in the dating business since Facebook started. The fact that they're actually attaching a label to that is actually hugely validating to the entire dating industry. And Bumble has evolved beyond dating. We're a full-fledged social network for people you don't know yet now.
So let's talk about the non-dating features. Friends, professional networking. Is that a foreshadowing of what's to come or what you want Bumble to become?
So the big vision of Bumble is to be the global empowerment brand. And we want to bring good people together at every level of their life. So that should not just bring you a date or a friend or a business partner. We really want to connect you across the board, and nobody in our space has ever been able to successfully do that. And so the fact that we've been able to foray into friend finding, networking successfully, and show that we have this lifetime value of when somebody meets a significant other, we don't lose that user. They can stay on our platform and friend find or connect for business. This is really showing that we can be this global platform for introducing you to people you don't know yet.
Now, when you launched, you really changed up the norms. You know, women make the first move, and I'm curious how the trends have changed. Is that the norm now, and where do you see the online dating trends going?
Sure. So yes, when we launched, we were the only platform to ever really put women out there and empower them to be confident and to own making the first move. Traditionally, gender norms suggested men always had to chase women, and you saw that spill over into the digital sphere. And so as we evolve with this incredible momentum of women becoming more empowered, we are also going to evolve. And Bumble is in such a right position to just continue building upon that and giving women more control through features and evolving even beyond where we are today, and I think you'll see a lot of that in the coming year.
So you've launched a new feature, Snooze,
yes,
which allows people to take a break from online dating. Why can't they just put their phone down? Why can't they just log out of the app?
So when was the last time you just put your phone down, right? I'm right there with you. So this feature is actually a great way to kind of build upon our values. We really want to engineer accountability, and we want to eliminate rejection. So just putting your phone down and ignoring conversations, that's not pleasant for either party on, you know, either end. And so we really want to empower our users to take a break when they need to. And what's the beauty of Bumble, why we're not nervous about losing our bottom line or losing our users, is at the end of the day, we all need human connection. Even if we take a break for a moment, we need to connect. We need to find love. We need to find business connections and friendship. So we will always be there, but we are encouraging our users to focus on themselves, and it just is core to who we are. You know, you're looking at a lot of these big social media giants right now on Capitol Hill and throughout, apologizing for their lack of accountability, the lack of catering to their users and giving users a break or taking care of their users, and the lack of, accountability across the board. And Bumble, really, we want to say, we've been here standing up, raising our hands, saying we're here to bring you an accountable experience. We want to engineer kindness and good behavior into the product through every single thing we do. And we've been doing that from day one. So it's really fascinating to see these giants right now kind of apologizing. And here we are saying we've been doing this from the very beginning.
So let's talk about one of the giants in the online dating space, which is Match, the parent company of Tinder. They sued you for patent infringement. You sued them back. I know you cannot talk about ongoing lawsuits, but how would you describe your relationship status with Match now? And are these lawsuits impacting you, the company? Is it impacting investor sentiment?
First of all, we're not raising money at the moment, and our growth is not impacted by any means. Our users don't care about what type of a lawsuit the company might be in right now. And by the way, we're staying so focused, we're so on track. And with growth, with scaling at such a level, comes challenges. And we're willing to weather the storm with whatever comes our way. But I have nothing but respect for their current CEO. I think she's a remarkable woman, and I think that we're just going to keep doing our thing, keep innovating, keep building, and adding value to our users, and we'll see what happens.
They bought Hinge, which was sort of just stomping on your territory. Does that change the landscape for you in terms of public or private? Going forward, what's the vision?
The big vision is to add as much value to the users and grow exponentially. We are going super international in the coming year and beyond. So the focus right now is going deeper into our existing markets, which will just penetrate the markets we've already had exponential growth in, and then really, really proving that we can be this global, international, high scale, very scalable brand. And what they choose to acquire and what they choose to do, that's their own business, and we wish them all nothing but the best.
Bumble CEO Whitney Wolfe Herd. Coming up, genetic testing company 23andMe has high hopes about a new partnership with Big Pharma. We will hear from the CEO about how they are hoping to cure a range of disease. And Bloomberg Tech is live streaming on Twitter. You can check us out at Technology, and be sure to follow our global breaking news network, TikTok, on Twitter. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back to the Best of Bloomberg Technology. I'm Emily Chang. Defense contractor Lockheed Martin is looking to drone racing for the next advance in artificial intelligence. We caught up with the company's chief technology officer, Keoki Jackson, at the TechCrunch Disrupt event in San Francisco this week.
This is an autonomy and AI challenge and bringing that to the world of high-speed flight. So we're partnering with NVIDIA and the Drone Racing League to compete essentially the best AIs against the best human drone pilots. So for anybody that's seen drone racing on TV, we're raising the bar there and we're raising the excitement level. We're challenging people out here at the conference today and around the world to develop the technology that will allow an autonomous drone to meet and beat the very best human pilots in a complicated drone race.
So there will be no human intervention here, right?
So once it goes, it has to work on its own. It's what we call edge computing and using that edge AI capability to navigate and complete the course as fast as possible. And these are speeds upwards of 80 miles an hour.
So talk to us about what kind of tracks you're going to use and the technical challenges of actually making this possible at this point.
Yeah, so a couple of things. I mean, like I said, this is all about putting really complex and high-power computing into a very compact, lightweight, low size, weight, and power device at the edge. And so these are small drones, right, moving at very high speeds. They're going into, if you've seen on TV, these drone racing courses, these are complicated 3D courses where they have to maneuver around obstacles and they have to be able to complete the course in the fastest time possible. Ultimately, we're going to compete these machines and the AIs that the folks out here develop against those very top human drone racing pilots.
And what kind of tracks are you using? Is this normal tracks?
Yeah, so we're going to use tracks comparable to what the actual pilots are using in Drone Racing League today.
Lockheed Martin likes to say it's been in Silicon Valley since before Silicon Valley was Silicon Valley, but some say this might be an odd fit for a defense company. How do you respond to that?
Well, again, the challenges that we face, whether it's defense-related challenges or it's putting people back to the moon and out to Mars, these are incredibly complex challenges. They're very, very difficult missions in very difficult environments. They require a whole range of technologies. And so to meet those mission challenges, we need to be bringing in not just the very best talent from around the area here, but we're looking to partner with companies that have new ideas, whether it's in autonomy and AI, sensors, machine learning, quantum information sciences. These are the technologies that are going to bring the next advances to these mission capabilities.
So do you think you'll find technology that Lockheed Martin could help develop?
Absolutely, and we're looking to work with and to collaborate with small companies through large companies. We're actually out here on the floor today at TechCrunch. We've got representatives from our Lockheed Martin Ventures Fund, this is a $200 million venture fund, who are looking for companies that have commercial and interesting technologies that are going to apply to this whole range of challenges from undersea to deep space.
You know, we talk a lot about self-driving cars, but, you know, in reality, they're probably a long way off. Are we farther along when it comes to flocks of drones that can be controlled by, you know, a piloted plane, you know, with or without human interaction?
Well, let me give you just a couple of examples, and I'll use one in the military. We actually, you'll recall a few years ago, there was a big problem with improvised explosive devices harming troops in Afghanistan. Our engineers said, hey, we think we have technology that can deal with that. And we ended up deploying 2 autonomous cargo helicopters, K-MAX helicopters. They did over 1,700 missions, autonomously delivered over 4 million pounds of food, supplies, and cargo. And those are the kinds of capabilities that exist today. And then on the commercial side, we're actually developing what we call a matrix technology. Think autonomous full-scale helicopters. We've been doing that for the past 5 years for things like operating in zero weather conditions in oil platforms in the North Sea, or being able to autonomously detect a forest fire, send a helicopter out to rescue somebody, and another helicopter out with a water bucket to put the fire out.
That was Lockheed Martin CTO, Keoki Jackson. Also at TechCrunch was 23andMe CEO and co-founder Anne Wojcicki. The genetic testing company is hoping to leverage its technology and a partnership with pharma giant GlaxoSmithKline to develop new treatments and cures for some of the most devastating diseases. Wojcicki told me why it is a dream close to her heart.
23andMe started with the data. So we said that drug discovery can fundamentally change if you have an incredible amount of data. And so the hypothesis we have is that if we have all this information and we discover targets that started from a human genetic component, that will have a higher success rate with drug development. So most drugs today, when they're in development, they fail. So the reason why it's so expensive to develop a drug is because 95% of everything fails. So if we can actually have a better beginning, starting with human genetics, we believe we have a higher likelihood of succeeding. So the partnership with GSK is all about helping us scale the drug development process. So we can find tons and tons and tons of ideas, but each idea is like a child. Imagine, and today we have 13 children. It's a lot. And so essentially it's like we've called in the big guns here to help us like really develop all of these programs. It's going to enable us to scale and really bring, have the potential of bringing drugs to market much faster for our customers and the whole world.
Any drugs or diseases in particular that you are
working on a whole range. I'm most excited, I'm by it because we have this genetic variant that runs in my family on the Parkinson's disease. So I'm obviously most excited is that GSK has a program going on the LRRK2 variant. So I'm really excited about that because we're going to be able to combine some of the power of what 23andMe has, which is all of our engaged customers, to the drug development that GSK had already been undergoing, specifically to this Parkinson's compound.
The FDA also approved you doing a test for the breast cancer gene,
Correct.
which is the first direct-to-consumer test.
Yeah.
How groundbreaking or impactful do you think this can really be?
I think that's huge because I think that more and more there's a trend that if you want to have good healthcare at scale, it can't always be a one-to-one through the physician. So you have to find ways to leverage the internet and leverage ways to scale information across the entire country. So this allows people to get really important, valuable, potentially life-saving information in an affordable fashion without having to have a physician or genetic counselor.
You volunteered 23andMe services to help reunite families separated at the U.S.-Mexico border. What's the status of that?
No one took us up on the offer. We had a number of people in government contact us and other groups contact us whether or not we could be part of this. And we said, like, part of our business is connecting families. So there's a lot of issues that, other people had around it. So I think fundamentally for me, 23andMe is always in that business of trying to help people improve their lives. So this was an opportunity for us to really help people, but it never came to fruition, that there was too many controversies around having us involved.
There's this question around, well, who owns that data? Could law enforcement subpoena that data?
Correct.
I mean, do you think it's a shame that it didn't?
It was a shame that it didn't happen, but again, a lot of the children have been reunited. There's all kinds of things that we can do. You can always opt people out of research, and you can opt people out of being part of the DNA relatives. It's anonymous. When you choose to spit, it's just you. There's no. We do not cooperate with law enforcement about this. We don't give your data to anyone else. So we felt like we had a good handle on privacy. But that's it. It's one of those things. We will always offer to help when there's an opportunity for us to help.
There is, though, this question of once you hand over that data, even if you have the proper consents in place, how do you prevent misuse? How do you prevent it from getting hacked? I mean, how do you think about these questions?
So the reality I always say is I love looking at your DNA, but your bank account is so much more interesting. So there's so much technology that's dedicated to protecting bank account information. So we can learn. There's tons of things that we can learn, and security and privacy security are top of mind for us because we've always said we have no business if we can't protect the data of our customers. So what we really believe is we have to do everything as a company to make sure that we are protecting your data, but at the same time we want to give you choice. So if you want to share your data with me or your mother or a friend, let's give you that choice. If you decide you want to delete your data, you can delete your data. totally fine. So what we really want to do is allow you to have choice about how your data is being used. And it's also part of the reason why we always give you back when there's a publication that's come out of our research. We want you to know about it.
That was 23andMe CEO and co-founder Anne Wojcicki. Well, fallen blood testing startup Theranos will formally dissolve, according to the Wall Street Journal. It is reported the Silicon Valley company will seek to pay unsecured creditors its remaining cash in the coming months. This means more bad blood for founder Elizabeth Holmes, who promised to revolutionize blood testing, but was criminally charged in June with defrauding investors along with the company's former president, Ramesh Sunny Balwani. Both have denied the charges. Coming up, the technology matching cancer patients with treatments specifically tailored to them. It's a new platform that's got the backing of a Hong Kong billionaire to take it global. This is Bloomberg. It's a new global platform that aims to revamp cancer care. Driver, which has been developed by Harvard-trained oncologists, will pair patients with specifically tailored treatments from anywhere in the world. CEO and co-founder Will Polkingham told our chief North Asia correspondent Stephen Engel why the startup launched in China, where the number of cancer patients is exploding.
Well, we didn't pick the timing. We've been in China for over 3 years. Since Horizons Ventures, Mr. Li Ka-shing led our Series A investment, we've endeavored to build our platform as a global one.
In a nutshell, how does it work and what need is it filling?
The problem that Driver solves is the following. We have a market failure right now in terms of how patients gain access to treatments. There's never been more treatments. 50 years ago, there were very few treatments. So the doctor did a pretty good job of interfacing with the cancer patient and getting them the right treatment.
There's a lot of information out there. But how do you get the right treatment?
There's tons of information. And so today, the only way a patient can get access to that treatment is through a physician. And the data is that physician is failing often to give the patient standard of care. So what that textbook answer is that a patient should get anywhere, and getting that patient access to the most advanced therapies in the form of clinical trials. So what Driver does is it says, look, instead of the doctor being by himself or herself responsible for clearing that market, what if we had a platform to help? We're not a new treatment per se. Driver is a middleman. We're an operating system between the patient and the doctor. But what we're hopefully curing is the treatment system itself. So as the cure for cancer treatment, hopefully we can speed up the development and the delivery of many more cures.
But is that marketplace, that ecosystem that is there between the doctor and the patient and what's out there, is that marketplace broken?
Broken. It's completely broken. And I think the data that it's broken comes from societies like the United States, where post-Obamacare, more than 9 out of 10 cancer patients have their care paid for. So as a society, at least in the United States, we've solved for that. Whether it's the government paying for it, your employer paying for it, yourself paying for it, some insurance paying for it, more than 9 out of 10, probably 95% of patients have it cared for. But too many patients don't get the standard of care. The overall statistic is hard to define. The numbers differ disease by disease, but there are some cancers where more than 60-70% of patients will not get guideline-based state-of-the-art standard of care. So I would say that's a market failure, meaning that the treatment exists, but the consumer's not getting it, and they have the ability to pay for it. Right. And the second market failure is how patients get access to clinical trials. And the number of Americans that get access to clinical trials is less than 3%. Yep. The number of Americans who would like to have access to clinical trials is more than 80%.
How does this fill the need as well to kind of bridge the gap that we've seen? We talk a lot about pilot shortages in the airline industry, shortage of this and this and this, but there are oncologist shortages in the world. Huge.
Massive. There's a massive shortage of oncologists. So two really bad things are happening at the same time. One is there's not enough oncologists. And two, there's more and more cancer patients. So over the last decade, the number of cancer patients across the world rose by approximately 30%. The majority of that increase driven by patients in Africa and Asia. And so you take the fact that there aren't enough oncologists. In 8 countries in Africa, there are 0 oncologists. There's a tenth of the number of oncologists in China compared to the United States.
I think the stat is 18 oncologists per 1 million people.
1 million people, and that number is about 10 times that in the U.S. And in the U.S., we think we might have a 20 to 30% deficiency. So if we're not comfortable taking a part of the oncologist's job and migrating it to a technology platform, it means that you're comfortable with a lot of people around the world not having an oncologist at all. The way we're going to solve that is by bringing some of an oncologist's job today and migrating it to a technology platform.
You decided you are a technology company.
We are a technology.
You're not a healthcare company.
And we're not even a health tech company. And I'm not sure why in healthcare and medicine, if you're a tech company, you need a adjective in front of you. Health tech, digital health. I like to say that drivers know more of a healthcare company than, say, Uber is a transportation company or Airbnb is a hospitality company. We're a tech company.
But how much did this impact how you decided to seek funding? Because you didn't necessarily want to be beholden to big pharma or to the insurance companies, I assume. Is that correct?
Yeah, you're exactly right. So, exactly. Many people, when we were getting started, said, well, why didn't you start off with going to pharma? And we didn't start off going to pharma because while we wanted, and while we're really excited, and we've begun lots of conversations with pharma about how we can work with them, we wanted Driver to be a platform for the patient. And we wanted to build alignment with those two key stakeholders who are in that room when a patient goes on a treatment. And that's just two people. It's the patient and the doctor. And we wanted to build our platform with the patient being our primary customer, with alignment with our partner centers. And then now that we've done that, we're really excited to bring pharma in, but in highly patient-aligned ways that can augment their options.
Driver CEO and co-founder Will Polkingham there with Bloomberg's Stephen Engel. Coming up, BBG Ventures' Susan Line is tackling venture capital's diversity problem and making bets on companies big and small, from startups all the way up to Amazon. We're going to hear from her next. This is Bloomberg. President of ABC Entertainment, CEO of Martha Stewart's media company, and Gilt Group CEO as well, Susan Line has worn many hats in her career. She's greenlit hits like Grey's Anatomy and Desperate Housewives and led brands like TechCrunch and Engadget. Today, she wants to see more women at the top. Line now leads Built by Girl Ventures, or BBG, a venture capital firm that looks for companies with at least one female founder. She also happens to be a personal investor in Amazon, which just hit $1 trillion valuation this week.
They're a very unique company. You know, they're a tech company, they're a commerce company, they're a media company, and they've really diversified in ways that I think most tech companies have not. And additionally, they've created an ecosystem or a flywheel that is brilliant, that moves people from one part of their ecosystem to another very seamlessly.
So there's been a huge run up in the shares in the last 3 years. So the stock has exploded, but really quickly. Does that concern you? That this could be the top, a plateau?
You know what? I don't think it's the top. I think when you look at, it's a very highly valued stock. Let's be fair. But I do think that there's still a lot of room there. When you think that e-commerce is still only about 15% of all commerce in the country, and they are the dominant player in that space. As it expands more, they're going to benefit from that. And I think they're also one of the few companies out there where you can say they're not going to be profoundly impacted by the trade wars.
Interesting. I want to ask you about that. I do have a chart here in my GTV library comparing Apple to Amazon. What about the threat of regulation? What about the fact that Amazon is in the president's crosshairs?
Yeah, well, I think it is, but I think the other thing to remember about Amazon is that they support and they enable thousands and thousands of small businesses around the country. So you go after Amazon, and you're going after really the mainstay of the president's support system. So I think he will think long and hard about how and when he goes after them.
Now, you know what it's like to run an e-commerce company that's competing with Amazon. Today we saw J.Crew, the J.Crew mercantile line, actually partner with Amazon. So you can now get J.Crew products on Amazon, which is kind of surprising. Do you think that's the only choice
for a retailer today is to work with Amazon, not against it, or is this going to be in isolation?
No, I think that there are lots of different options for both retailers and for brands, right? So one of them is definitely to use that Amazon platform because you can reach an enormous number of people, but there are plenty of brands that are doing very well by going directly to consumers, and those are among the companies we back as a VC firm. There's no question that there's a lot of things Amazon does really well. One of them is not necessarily developing brand strength. And so for companies like Warby Parker and Casper and Glossier, they've developed a direct relationship with their consumer. It's an emotional connection, and it keeps that customer with them, I think, for longer and on a more consistent basis.
So let's talk about BBG. You came on the show when you launched this fund. You know, the goal is, every company has a female founder. Have you found that to be a competitive advantage?
Yes, 100%. One of the reasons that we launched BBG Ventures was that we knew that women were the dominant consumer. We are either responsible for or have the last word on 85% of all consumer purchases in every part of life. It's not just fashion and beauty. It is what healthcare plan you use. It is what insurer you choose. It is where you buy your house. You know, all those things, women are the dominant force in. So it just made sense to us to back entrepreneurs who understood that end user and who were going to speak her language. We're going to know where to find her and how to delight her, how to serve her needs.
Now, despite the fact that there are people like you out there making bets on women-led companies still get 2% of venture capital funding. And I have a lot of investors say to me, we're looking hard, but we can't find them. What are they doing wrong? Well,
they aren't really looking. We've seen over 4,000 companies since we launched 4 years ago, all with a female founder. I think that organizations like Allraise, which I imagine you've covered, but Allraise is doing fantastic work in that space. In fact, they're going to be at TechCrunch Disrupt.
That's trying to get more women into venture and more women funded.
Correct, exactly. And I think that there are lots and lots of women out there starting businesses. The problem is that the VC world right now is still dominantly male. 91% of all VC partners are male. So that impacts the way that venture dollars get invested. And it may seem like it's an arcane part of the finance world and not really that important, but it is. I mean, truly, venture capital has a much bigger impact than you would think. If you look back over the last 44 years, 42% of all the companies that went public during that period of time were venture-backed. So if we want to have a more diverse ecosystem of companies out there, if we believe that a more diverse group of entrepreneurs is going to come up with better solutions, then we've got to find ways for more venture capital to go to women.
BBG Ventures, Susan Line there. And that does it for this edition of the Best of Bloomberg Technology. We will bring you all the latest in technology throughout the week. You can tune in every day, 5 p.m. in New York, 2 p.m. in San Francisco. And Bloomberg Tech is live streaming on Twitter. You can check us out at Technology. And be sure to follow our global breaking news network, TikTok, on Twitter. This is Bloomberg.